Just got this car back on the road right before Thanksgiving, and I've had just a whirlwind of activity around here since then, which means that I've barely driven the car, maybe just a few times. And there's a couple of things I really need to take care of here. The very little bit that I've been able to drive this car since I got it back on the road, I've not been certain whether it's not running as well as it was, or if it's just how weird it feels because I do have the throttle cable entirely too tight. So the first thing I need to do is put just a little bit of slack in this throttle cable and see how much difference that makes. I suspect I'm going to wind up deciding that I also need to go over and make more adjustments to the carburetors for some reason, which is very confusing to me because when I pulled them from the car, I stuck them down into a bucket where they remained undisturbed the entire time. I was very careful not to make any adjustments to any of the screws. The only thing that I can think of is now that the engine has better seals all the way around, including, the intakes and everything, that it just needs to be adjusted again because it doesn't have maybe some tiny little gaps in the seals in certain places that it did when I adjusted it last time. So I'm sure I'll wind up having to do that, but we're going to start with this because it's amazing how challenging it is to drive a car smoothly when there's no slop at the beginning of pushing on your accelerator pedal. It's just absolutely critical to have some play in there. And this would make it seem like there is some play. It's not really, really tight, but it is too tight. But it's not just that easy because I am actually already at the very tip of this throttle cable end. And so realistically, what I need to be able to do is rotate this assembly clockwise a few degrees, which means I need to be able to lengthen this rod and shorten the other rod. I don't think shortening this rod is going to be a problem, but we'll see whether there are enough remaining threads to lengthen this one. And again, I've changed nothing. So the only thing that makes sense to me at all is that somehow the engine is actually sitting further back in relationship to the body. The cable didn't change, none of this stuff changed. The linkage is the same as it was. So it's the only thing that makes sense to me. Now I do see a fair bit of threads right here, and I'm hopeful that means that I'm going to be able to lengthen this enough. But there's not much in the way of extra threads on this one, I don't believe. We're going to find out in a second here. Now, for those unfamiliar, one of these has reverse threads while the other has standard threads. And so you kind of need to make sure you're paying attention to that. This ball joint has the letter L stamped on it, and this is the one with reverse threads. So instead of turning it counterclockwise to loosen it off and turning it clockwise to loosen it off. And as you can see, I've left the nut more or less where it was, and there's not a lot of threads remaining there. I wouldn't want to go much further out with that if I didn't have to. And fortunately, I don't have to because I've got quite a few threads on this end that I can bring out. So we'll start with that. I'll loosen this up, and now we're back into place, and as you can see, more threads showing here than before. That's basically the same, and it's kind of right at that point where I feel like it's not gonna be weak. I think it's just kind of right there on the edge. I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with it. And I'm not going to adjust this at all because that gave me just enough. I went in and felt the pedal and it feels loose enough to me. We'll see if we think it's too loose after I drive it. But now I just need to adjust this guy to make sure that the carburetors both open at precisely the same moment. Another thing that I realized after I put the engine back into the car was that I was still getting oil leaks. And that was really, really disappointing to me. But something that's happened to me in my old age is I've become a bit more patient, and I tend not to jump to too many conclusions too quickly. And after I looked around and gave it some more consideration, I think there may just be two primary reasons for it. One is that there's a load of oil that has already been sucked into and trapped inside of the insulation surrounding the heat exchanger boxes, which I did not make any effort to clean. And the other is that I kind of overfilled my oil bath air cleaner, and I was able to verify that yes, some oil was dripping down back onto the engine tin here and then getting down to the underside of the motor that way. So I'm hopeful that with a little bit of time, this may just clear up. And it may just be that the changes I've made, the new seals I've put in and whatnot, have all been successful attempts at stopping oil leaks. Only time will tell. Well, it's still warming up, and it's no surprise, but having that little bit of slop right at the beginning of the pedal is just vital. It makes every bit of difference. So that's definitely a lot better, and we'll just see how much better it's running after it gets fully warmed up here. But this is already a lot better. That was different. What the heck happened? I've never experienced that. I mean, not in this car anyway. I like the way that sounds. This is considerably better. That feels a lot more like it should. It's amazing something that simple can make so much difference. I mean, it really felt like it was not running right. But it feels great now. I like the simple fixes. More time for other stuff. I got plenty of other things to be doing. All right, thanks for watching again. Like, subscribe, do all the things.